This time, James Prinsep and another scholar named C.L. Grotefend shared the credit equally, although they worked separately. Karosi is written from right to left. There is a great deal of discussion on the origin of Karosi script. Some say that it is the work of a single inventor. Others say that it is an evolution from Aramaic alphabet. Over a period of time, extensive modifications were made to denote certain sounds found in Indic languages. That is why it does not resemble Aramaic. Here it is important to remember that script evolves as a requirement to express certain sounds. Therefore, sometimes a given script is modified by adding dashes or strokes to denote certain way of pronunciation. It is the phoneme that determines the shape of the script. Karosi probably was developed to suit the Gandhara society's way of speaking. A language that became almost the lingua franca of the Kushanas was the Gandhari. It was a modified, simplified Sanskrit written in Karosi. Evolution and development of language and script are interesting and challenging topics. Both Brahmi and Karosi seem to have emerged around the 5th-4th century BC. From there, both developed. Most of Ashoka's edicts are written in Prakrit language using Brahmi script. Slowly, an epigraphical hybrid Sanskrit evolved. This eventually gave way to Sanskrit. This group of languages with their local variations is called MIA or Middle Indo-Aryan languages. On the side of the script, Brahmi seems to have given way to Nagari and all the other later Indian scripts. So eventually, Prakrit written in Brahmi slowly gave way to Sanskrit written in Nagari and its other local variants. And Gandhari, written in Karosi, seems to have died on its own after the 3rd century CE. Dr. Rajat Sanyal is a specialist in epigraphy, and he comes often to this Bharat gallery of the Indian Museum. The inscriptions on these pillars are his subject of interest. Dr. Sanyal explains the donation of coins to cover the monastery.
This is one of the finest medallions in the Bharat cluster of sculptures. This medallion depicts a whole story represented within a single composition. It represents the story of a merchant called Anathapindaka who covered up a monastery called Jetavana with coins, and the entire medallion shows its different segments shows different parts of that story. Most importantly, this medallion is supported with 3 inscriptions. The principal inscription is on the lower border of the medallion. Then there are 2 other level inscriptions. The main purpose of this inscription is to describe the story depicted in the medallion. It reads the name of the monastery, the donor of it, and his action. Jetavana Anatha Pediko, that means Jetavana the monastery, Anatha Pindaka the merchant, deity gave, Kuti Sangtha Tena Keti. That means the merchant Anathapindaka has covered up the entire area of the monastery with coins. Then the two other level inscriptions that are on the upper and left margin of the medallion, this reads Gadha Kuti, which is Sanskritized as Gandha Kuti. It's a segment of a monastery which has been translated as the perfumed hut. It's a part of the monastery, and this is a fragmentary inscription which has 5 letters. Actually reads Kosa Kuti. It is highly fragmented, but it can be reconstructed as Kosa Kuti, which should be the hut of the Kaushambas.
That is quite a feat. To cover the entire monastery compound with coins will take a lot of coins and wealth. But what is amazing is that the entire story is depicted in one medallion. There are the bullocks and the tilted cart. This perhaps is the donor who looks on, and these are the workers. This lady is perhaps the supplier of drinking water, and at the back there are the onlookers, a typical Indian scenario. Since the scene is so vivid and elaborate, not much explanation is needed, and hence the writing is so sparse. This is typical. Very often the communication is done in sculptures, and therefore not much explanation is needed.
Now in this composition we have 2 inscriptions and 1 medallion. The upper inscription is of 2nd century BC, and it narrates the donation of a man who came from a certain place. It describes his native place and records his donation in the Bharhut cluster of sculptures. And in the second inscription, which is at least 100 years later than this upper one, if not more, it only describes the Buddha. Most interestingly, below it is the medallion that depicts the event of the birth of the Buddha, the dream of his mother, Mayadevi.
Inscriptions can be broadly categorized as royal, prashasti or royal panegyrics, administrative and personal. Royal edicts contain the statements of the ruling authorities. The most famous examples are the edicts of Ashoka. Prashasti or royal panegyrics contains praises of the king or an aristocrat for his valor, generosity or dedication. Administrative edicts called shasanas record almost exclusively the transfer of landed property in the rural areas. These are usually engraved on copper plates and form the largest gamut of epigraphic documents of pre-Islamic India. Personal inscriptions can be a memorial epigraph done in memory of a local hero, or they can narrate an act of donation.
Like most of the other inscribed pillars within the Bharut cluster, this pillar is also supported by a donative single line inscription in Brahmi letters and Prakrit language. The inscription actually reads Vedisa Chapa Devaya Revati Mita Bharayaya Pathama Thabhe Danam, which means a man and his wife along with their friend donated this first pillar on this pedestal.
Epigraphs are mute witnesses of the past, holding numerous surprises for the one who has the audacity and the patience to unearth their secrets. A number of good books and periodicals are available on this subject.